Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 18, The Implant. Hi everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. Happy summer. The first official day of summer was this week. I had a really fun day yesterday. I got to shoot a promotional video for a company that makes electric vehicle batteries. And so I got to spend the day in a brand new F-150, Ford F-150, let me get that right, Lightning, which is their first all-electric pickup truck. And it was a dream. It was so much fun being in the mountains of Colorado, just driving around in this truck. I didn't get to drive it, which, truth be told, I was a little bit relieved about that. They asked me like, hey, are you comfortable driving a pickup truck? I'm like, I've never driven one. So one of my co-stars did, and she did an amazing job. It was a ginormous truck. I mean, every pickup truck just seems humongous to me. And I am not a big fan of pickup trucks. I will be honest. They are not my favorite vehicle on the road. In fact, I swear at them all the time. I just think they're so obnoxiously big. They take up so much room in parking lots, parking garages. They're so slow on the road. They're all sluggish half the time. It's just so annoying. So I'm not a big fan of pickup trucks in general, but I have to say the pickup truck yesterday, the Lightning F-150, was pretty impressive. And I was really surprised at how much pickup it had for an electric vehicle. I don't know why, because I don't know anything about electric vehicles, so I shouldn't be surprised. People were like, oh no, they have a lot of power. I was like, okay. But it was just such a fun day. I met a couple other great actresses. We were pretending we were on this girls' trip and having fun, and all we had to do was like blast music in this amazing truck, drive around and dance around. It was just one of those fun shoots where I felt really lucky that, wow, this is my career. I get to do this for a living. And then today I get to do this podcast. So that's another dream come true. So let's get into the episode, shall we? The Implant has the following synopsis from my coffee table book. George attends a funeral with his new girlfriend, hoping to improve his standings in her eyes. But his double dipping of a potato chip leads to chaos. Jerry enlists Elaine to help authenticate his new girlfriend's fake-looking breasts. The investigation backfires before Jerry discovers they're real and spectacular. Kramer thinks Salman Rushdie is working out at his health club. This episode was written by Peter Melman. All right, first we're in the health club. Jerry sees a woman. Her name is Sidra, and she's on the Stairmaster. They chat for a little bit. He makes a funny Stairmaster joke. She leaves to go take a sauna, and he confirms that they're getting together on Thursday night. The actress who plays Sidra is Teri Hatcher, probably one of the most famous guest stars. She got her start in the early 80s on The Love Boat, a few years later on MacGyver. That's where I remember her from. I was a little jealous of her character because she was a love interest for Richard Dean Anderson, MacGyver himself, and I had a big crush on him, and I was like, girl, get away. I'm 7, and he's mine. After this appearance on Seinfeld, she went on to star in Lois and Clark, in which she played Lois Lane. Very appropriate, considering Jerry loves Superman. And I loved that show. Oh my gosh. And admittedly, it was because I had a huge crush on Dean Cain. I don't feel the same way about Dean Cain anymore. I think a lot of you who listen to this podcast would know why. He's a big-ass dope. But anyway, I did like that show at the time. She also played a Bond girl, and then, of course, went on to star in the wildly successful Desperate Housewives. And I think she's perfectly fine as Sidra. Very beautiful. She's charming. It's not a very comedic role. There's nothing super funny about her performance, but she fulfills the role and what it's supposed to be. I will admit that, considering it's like the main thing about this plot, I was surprised that they didn't hire an actress that had bigger boobs. Because I think the whole point is to like kind of, are they, aren't they, fake? And even for the audience, I think we were supposed to be guessing. So for me, and maybe I'm just thinking too literally here, or like, stereotypically like, oh, it has to be like Pamela Anderson, huge boobs or whatever. But yeah, I just felt like for as much attention as the are they or are they not fake, boob conversation, they didn't pick an actress who was more endowed than Teri Hatcher. They actually talked about that in the Inside Look. The producer, Bruce Kirschbaum, I believe his name is, he said, it was tricky to cast this part because we needed someone, an actress who was well endowed, but also funny and could, really pull off this role. But then we got Teri Hatcher, and that was the jackpot. And I was like, she's at most a B cup. So I've thought a lot about this, and I think I've said enough about Teri Hatcher's boobs. At any rate, obviously this episode still works. I've always thought, I feel like for as much attention and the questioning about whether these are fake or not, the boobs on the actress would have been bigger. And now I think I need to end this whole thought, so I will. Moving on, Elaine walks up as Sidra leaves and asks Jerry, "Oh, is that the girl you went out with?" "Yes, tremendous girl. He really likes her." And she just looks at her and looks back at Jerry and says, they're fake. And Jerry's like, "What?" And she says, "Come on, don't you think they seem a bit too perfect?" "Yes, they do." And Elaine's a little confused. She never knew he was so into breasts. She thought he was a leg man. But why would he be a leg man? He has legs. Anyway, he can't really accept her testimony. She's never seen her naked. Maybe you should look into that. I need to know. And Elaine says, "Well, maybe in a few more dates, you're going to find out for yourself." And Jerry says, "Well, don't be so sure about that, because look at George. He's on his 9th date with Betsy and still hasn't gotten anywhere. Apparently, things keep messing up when he tries to make a move, like last time she was on his wrong side." Wrong side? Yes. Like he can't go left, Jerry can't go right. And what about women? Oh, we just play defense. So the purpose of this scene, of course, we're setting it all up. Jerry likes Sidra, Elaine thinks her boobs are fake, and George is struggling to get anywhere with his girlfriend. And my take, this episode is so well written from the first moment to the last moment. Every scene is chock full of just strong dialogue, strong story development. It's so well done. And that back and forth between Jerry and Elaine in this opening scene, it's some of the best of the entire series. All starting with the, they're fake. It's so good. I love how sure Elaine is, and that discussion that ensues with Jerry, who is, he's making that case. She doesn't really have the evidence. It's so delicious. It's so well written. There's not a moment wasted. It also flows so well into the George discussion. We don't see George, but we already know what's going on with him. So I thought that was a really nice touch as well. And I love the ease that Jerry and Elaine are enjoying now. There isn't any residual jealousy. There's no hesitancy to talk about other people. We're totally past that. And thank God we are. All right, next we're at Betsy's place. This is George's girlfriend. They go to sit on the couch and she sits on his right side. And we all know that's not good for him making a move. So he asks if they can switch seats. "Oh, I'd really prefer to sit here." Apparently she doesn't hear very well out of her right ear. "Oh, come on, come on." Oh, George literally pushes her and rolls her over to the other side. It's so gross. It's not a good look for George. And then George asks, "Come on, is this so bad?" "What?" Classic I can't hear joke. He goes in to kiss her, but the phone starts ringing. And he tries to keep her on the couch. He says, No, George, what if it's an emergency?" "Oh, there's about 3 emergencies in the entire universe. What makes you think you're one of them?" Finally, she gets up and answers the phone, and right away, "Oh my God!" "All right, maybe 4. The actress who plays Betsy is Mullally, another actress who went on to wild success just like Teri Hatcher. Of course, she is best known as Karen Walker from Will and Grace. I love Mullally. I don't know how you're supposed to say it, but I love her just in general. But I think she's so cute as Betsy. She does such a great job being the sweet girlfriend of George and just like knowing what she's capable of from watching her on Will and Grace and later on in Parks and Rec. Oh my God, her character in Parks and Rec is amazing. Tammy 2, I believe. And just so seeing her as this like sweet young woman, it really shows her range. And I think she does a great job. Next, we are in the sauna. We see Elaine enjoying a nice sweat in the sauna, and we can hear her thoughts over voiceover. And she's having a really good sweat. Good beads, sweating bullets. She looks down to see Sidra sitting on the bench below her. And Elaine says, she doesn't need to see her naked to know those aren't real. Like a rack on her chest. Then Sidra goes to lay down and takes off her towel. Whoa, doctor. I knew it. They're definitely fake. My take on this scene, I love hearing Elaine's thoughts always, and this scene is no different. It's such a great continuation from her conversation with Jerry about needing to see her naked in order to know the truth about her breasts. And also one of my favorite things to talk about is physicality in actors. And JLD, she's just sitting in this scene, but you see her acting with her face and her toes. Watch her toes in this scene. They're like curling and reacting just as much as her face is. She's a great toe actor. Another thing to add to the list of talents of JLD. Next, we're back at Betsy's place. She's crying on the phone, asking about when the funeral is. She was so sick, it was a blessing. Meanwhile, George is in the background, just frustrated and annoyed. And he's just miming these childish reactions behind her, and it's really funny. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Elaine is telling Jerry she's absolutely sure they're fake. This chick is playing with Confederate money. And so Jerry says, well, that's the end of that. Wait, what? Just because of that? Just because of that? It's like finding out Mickey Mantle corked his bat. Elaine can't understand this. Well, you've dated women with nose jobs. What's the difference? Jerry goes on this whole thing about how the nose isn't something you aspire to get to. And then Elaine has that great line. It's a little jokey, but I accept it. It's, just when I think you're the shallowest man I've ever met, you somehow manage to drain a little more out of the pool. Kramer enters. And Jerry says he does wonder what fake breasts feel like. And Kramer's like, I know what they feel like. I lived in LA for a few months. And while he hated it there, he just misses the warm weather. Oh, and then he just remembered. Guess who he saw working out at the health club? Salman Rushdie. Elaine laughs out loud. Yeah, right. Salman Rushdie. Well, you got 5 million Muslims after you. You want to stay in pretty good shape. And then she takes a sip of a huge glass of milk. What? Elaine, what are you doing there? At this scene, again, there's more fantastic dialogue and really fun back and forth between Elaine and Jerry. All the stuff with Jerry comparing a nose job to a boob job. It's so wonderfully done. And I do like that Elaine feels that Jerry is overreacting here by breaking off his date with Sidra. I wish that went a little deeper, like, well, what is she? Just a walking pair of boobs to you? Like, I wish that went a little bit deeper, that conversation, because it is bullshit. Give me a break, Jerry. Next, we're at the health club. All the guys are in the sauna now, and they're giving advice to George about what he should do. And they tell him, well, you should go to Detroit for this funeral. It's a golden opportunity to advance the relationship. You're the consolation guy. It's instant boyfriend status. But George is hesitant, of course. Classic George. It's an expensive flight. He doesn't want to spend the money. But then Kramer gives him this idea to get a death in the family fare. In fact, he'll go down and get a ticket with him, and he'll split it. George will get to go to Detroit for a quarter of the price, and Kramer can get the bonus miles. Next, we're in the sauna with Elaine, and her voiceover is back. She's once again loving her sweat, beads of sweat. Sidra walks in, and we hear Elaine say, oh, look who's here, Silicon Valley. Sidra is chatting with a friend and tells her how this guy goes out with her once, makes plans for a second date, and then cancels and says he never wants to see her again. Elaine audibly reacts, getting Sidra's attention. Elaine apologizes, says, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing. Oh, that's okay. Did he give you a reason? Yeah, he said he's going back to his old girlfriend. He says she's mentally ill. I love Elaine's face. Really? He's one of these guys who's obsessed with neatness and order. He would have made a great Nazi. Hey, does he ever talk about Superman? How did you know? Oh, I know the type. Sidra sits opposite from Elaine, and we can see that she's taking her towel off as she introduces herself. And Elaine gets up to shake her hand, loses her balance, and falls right into her. My take on this scene, it's one of the most classic moments of the series, Elaine falling into Sidra's boobs. JLD does a great job, no surprise, with the physical comedy here, losing her balance. And the direction here, I have to say, is great. I love seeing Elaine fall right into the camera, and the opposite shot of Teri Hatcher's face is great. Really funny. And it's all believable. I mean, the surfaces would be slick in a sauna, all those beads of sweat everywhere, so this could definitely happen. And I thought of this too. This was a potential female friend for Elaine, but nope, it all blows up. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment. Elaine's explaining what happened in the sauna, how she lost her balance and just fell into her. Yeah, fell on her? I touched him. Anyway, they're real. Excuse me? Elaine feels bad, you can tell. I think they might be real. Well, what do you know? You have no breast touching experience. I've touched mine. So have I. Oh, right. I forgot. Yes, Elaine. I love that comeback. And Jerry claims, oh, look, you're still not an expert. Just touching two breasts, no. Elaine's like, whatever. I think they're real. And if they are spectacular. Jerry just slumps under the counter. What are you doing to me? I love this scene. It's, once again, so well written. I'm going to keep saying it throughout this episode. Peter Melman just knocking it out of the park with this one. The best clapback by Elaine ever. Oh, right. I forgot. It's so perfect. And that so deserves a little dancey strut she does right after she says that. I also love that Elaine has no problem admitting how spectacular Sidra's boobs are. All of the humility of Elaine here. In the beginning, she's basing her assumption about Sidra's boobs on her own biases, and she just thinks they're too perfect. But once she has, I guess we could say, tactile evidence, she has nowhere to go except to admit her mistake and her admiration. And I thought that was a nice touch to keep Elaine's integrity there. Next, we're at the ticket counter. Kramer is laying it on thick about the death of his aunt, and George offers to pay for his ticket. The ticket agent explains how the bereavement fare works, that they would need a copy of the death certificate so that they can refund half of the fare. And George is like, I'm sorry? Well, of course they need documentation, otherwise people could take advantage. Well, turns out it's $387 to Detroit, and Kramer comes over, just all of a sudden calm, and gives his frequent flyer number. The actress who plays a ticket agent is Carol Rosenthal. She was a comedic actress for years in the 90s, and this is a very random thing I remember her from, and you Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey fans might know what I'm talking about here, but there is a scene in the beginning with the seance, and she's one of the people in the seance, so I just recognize her from that. And looks like nowadays she does more casting work, and I like her. I think she's very good as a ticket agent. Next, we're back at Jerry's apartment. He's still so skeptical about Elaine's assessment about Sidra's boobs. And Elaine says, hey, out of the two of us, I'm the only one who's touched him. Elaine's like, look, I wouldn't have said anything if I knew you were going to stop seeing her. And Jerry says, I don't mind someone with a phony personality, but I got to draw the line somewhere. Kramer enters. George is off to Detroit, and in 2 days, he's off to Puerto Rico. Elaine then tells Kramer, hey, I saw the guy you were talking about. That is not Salman Rushdie. Wrong. My take, it's another fun exchange here between Elaine and Jerry. This episode is just full of them. I love how Elaine points out the indisputable fact that she is the only one who has touched them. I also love JLD's delivery of that line to Kramer. It's so ridiculous that he thinks this man is Salman Rushdie. She cannot even get through her line without chuckling. I just love it. Next, we're at the health club. This kind of little fun back and forth. Jerry and Kramer enter. They see Salman talking to Sidra. Well, Kramer doesn't think they're real. Jerry doesn't think it's Salman. Well, they both got to know, so they're going to talk to Sidra and Salman. And then we get this short scene with Kramer in the sauna with the suspected Salman. And keeps dropping these little hints. Yeah, I feel like I'm back at the desert. I spent some time in the Mideast. This guy's been there too. And turns out his name is Sal Bass, and he is a writer. All right, we're at the Detroit funeral now. Betsy is introducing George as her boyfriend to her family, including her Aunt May and her brother Timmy. Aunt May says, there's some delicious snacks, and Father Jessup was about to get himself a snack. George offers to do it for her. You sit right here. I'm going to get you a snack. At the snack table, Father Jessup makes some conversation and compliments George. You seem to be of a great comfort to Betsy. We're all so appreciative. But we all know George is on a mission to find this death certificate, so he asks Father Jessup, at a terrible time like this, who would I get the death certificate from? The actress who plays Aunt May is Peggy Stewart. She started acting in the 1930s in Westerns, and pretty much her career never stopped until a few years before her death in 2019. And in my research, I found out that she played Meemaw in The Office. That was one of her last roles. She played Pam's strict grandmother who doesn't approve of Pam being pregnant before marriage. I think she's so adorable. It's such a small role, but I like how delighted she is to meet George. And then Peggy Stewart has a little physicality moment where she's pointing and kind of like her fingers wagging. There's some great snacks. I've always noticed that because I'm a freak. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment. Kramer is still convinced it's salmon rushdie. He just substituted bass, one fish for another. Jerry calls him an idiot. It's salmon, not salmon. Jerry, you're missing the point. Jerry's like, fine, whatever. But you got to get out of here. Sidra's coming over. Oh, did you ask her? I'm going to find out tonight. Back at the Detroit funeral, George is now talking to the doctor who attended this late aunt. And the doctor is very suspicious of George. And why do you need a death certificate? Oh my God. George says he's putting together an admittedly rudimentary scrapbook for Betsy. And Doc says, well, I guess I can make you a copy. Okay. And you can just tell, like, who is this guy? What the hell? Then George is very pleased with himself. He's going to get that bereavement fare after all. Goes over to the snacks and he double dips a chip. Timmy, Betsy's brother, goes insane. It's like putting your whole mouth right in the dip. And then he goes on to say, from now on, just take one dip and end it. George gets very defensive. I mean, this is the last thing you should do to George, like challenge him like this. So he says, well, I'm sorry, Timmy. I don't dip that way. And then Timmy makes it physical. Next, we are at Jerry's apartment. Sidra's there, and she can't believe she's there. She must be crazy. She goes to sit on the couch, but sits on the left end, leaving Jerry to have to sit on her right, which is his wrong side. He asks to switch because he likes to sit to the left of people. It makes him feel like he's driving. And they're trying to make conversation, and Jerry just starts in with the boob talk. You know, that Jane Mansfield had some big breasts. They were like choking her. I hear that's how she died. Then he goes a little deeper. Jerry says, you know, women today seem bigger. People ask me if I've had mine done. It gets tiring. It's really none of their business. Oh, the nerve. You know, people have asked me if you've... What do you tell them? Tell them whatever you want me to tell them. And Sidra gets a little flirty and says, I think you might find out soon enough. Then we hear a huge bang on the door. Kramer is there calling for Jerry, saying it's an emergency. Turns out he wants to borrow Jerry's swim trunks because he's packing for Puerto Rico. This is an emergency? There's a whole funny discussion about, I don't want your boys down there. It's a little familiar. What's wrong with my boys? Fine. He lets Kramer borrow him. It's in the top drawer of his dresser. Elaine walks up, and it's a bit awkward because, well, Sidra sees her. Oh, hi, Sidra. Elaine? Then kind of panicky, Elaine's like, I'm here to see Kramer. Yeah, you know, she's going to show me pictures of places I can visit when I go to Puerto Rico, you know, from when you two went there. Oh, shit. Okay, Jerry kicks them out pretty quickly. Sidra figures it all out, accuses Jerry that he sent Elaine in the sauna to feel her boobs. That was an accident. I think you're both mentally ill. And she leaves, only to come back to say, by the way, they're real and they're spectacular. It's a great wrap-up scene. I love all the dialogue between Jerry and Sidra. JLD is so great. Her reaction, I always love the, hi, Sidra. She's like choking on it. It's great. And that panic to get Kramer, it's just really well played. All right, we're back in Detroit, and we just see the outside of the house and a brouhaha happening inside. Betsy is screaming at George, get out! I never want to see you again. Later at the airport, a disheveled George is trying to get the bereavement fare by showing a picture of himself. It's a Polaroid of himself by the casket. And the agent's like, nice try, not even close. The actress who plays the ticket agent is Susan Bobian. She has been in just about everything. And most recently, she was a guest star on HBO's Insecure. I love her. The way she says, what is this? When George gives her the picture, it's just perfect. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. A sauna is a place for relaxation, ridding your body of toxins, clearing your pores, and decongesting your internal organs. But there are dangers to being in a sauna. No, I'm not talking about overheating, getting dehydrated, or feeling dizzy. I'm talking about falling while moist and naked. Not only does it look so gross, but you could seriously injure yourself or some innocent, naked and sweaty bysitter. That's why you need Sidra's Sauna Socks. Hi, I'm Sidra, founder and inventor of Sidra's Sauna Socks. I had a traumatic experience in a sauna many years ago, so I invented these socks with extra grip so you wouldn't have to suffer like I did. Not only do Sidra's Sauna Socks prevent you from falling and looking very unattractive, it will prevent you from grabbing onto moist and naked strangers while you are falling. Who knows which damp body part your hands will clutch onto? Not only would that be traumatic for you, but you could have an assault charge on your clammy hands. So order a pair of Sidra's Sauna Socks today and enjoy the protection of the triple grip rubber traction technology every time you're sweating beads. For a limited time, you will also receive a complimentary butt grip pad with your order. The butt grip pad uses the same anti-slip technology that you can sit on so that you don't slip off a sauna bench crotch first. No one ever wants to slip and fall, but especially not when you're naked, soggy, and saggy. Sidra's Sauna Socks. Only you can prevent sauna trauma. And we're back. In fact, I am literally back. I had to take a break from recording. I took my kids to the pool. We got back. I had to shower. Then it was dinner time. So I am recording the remainder of this episode a few hours after I started. So just in case you wanted to know what my day's been like. Okay, so let's get into the extras. There was an inside look, and there was one comment that JLD said, and she just remembered that Teri Hatcher was a very good sport about her grabbing her boobs, which begs the question, did she really grab her boobs? Because we don't see that, and I don't know why she would have to, but I think she just meant she was just a good sport shooting the episode that week. The commentary was done by Peter Melman, the writer of this episode. He is very proud of this episode. He says it's really one of his best works. And as I keep repeating during this podcast, I completely agree. I think just top to bottom, this is a perfectly written episode. He did mention, and I thought this was interesting, there are no scenes in the coffee shop in this episode, no monks scenes, because they had to build the sauna set in its place. So all the conversations that would normally happen at monks, they needed to happen in the sauna. I think a good example of that was the scene between Kramer, Jerry, and George when George is asking them advice about what to do with Betsy and the funeral. That's very much a monk scene, but they decided to do it in the sauna. I wanted to mention this because I've talked about it in previous episodes. I just love the use of the word idiot. And when said correctly, it's like the funniest thing to me. So when Jerry says to Kramer, when he says he substituted one fish for another, instead of salmon, he went with bass. And Jerry it's like a throwaway word, but he just says it. He says, listen, you idiot. First of all, he just says it so easily. And Peter Melman said it's so liberating as a writer to have that word just be delivered so well in a show like this. And I'm a huge fan of the word idiot. So especially when it's preceded by stupid. Stupid idiot to me, it's one of the worst insults, and it's also one of the funniest. He did also mention that for years after this episode, Teri Hatcher said that people would just openly gawk at her breasts and say they're real and they're spectacular. And that went on for quite a while. And he's like, I sort of felt guilty about that, but no, I didn't really feel guilty about that. In the notes about nothing, Elaine's voiceover was pre-recorded and they played it over a speaker while they filmed in front of a live studio audience so that JLD could react accordingly. So I thought that was a little fun fact and makes sense, of course. She needs to know what her thoughts are at the time so she can react appropriately with her face and her toes. Like I said, incredible toe acting by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. The scene where she sees Sidra take her towel off the first time, Elaine was supposed to end the scene by saying, "Oh yeah, you got to get up pretty early in the morning to get a phony boobie past me." I think it was right to cut that one. Look, Peter Melman, this is a genius episode, really well written, but that one doesn't live up to the genius of the rest of the episode. Also in the notes about nothing, Kramer originally was to explain that fake breasts feel like Malamars a week after the expiration date. I thought that was actually a really good line. JLD once commented that grabbing onto Sidra's breasts in the sauna was the craziest thing Elaine ever did. Certainly, it's up there. I think we can think of a few more things. I don't know, just right away what came to my mind was everything she does to Peggy when she works for Jay Peterman when she finds out that Peggy doesn't like her germs. Rubbing a keyboard on her ass was pretty crazy too. And finally, in the notes about nothing, JLD once described the sort of relationship Elaine had while dating Jerry. So this was her theory about what their relationship was like when they were dating. And she says, it was a very volatile relationship. I think they had a relationship that worked for a period of time and then just blows apart. I guess they have to have sex on occasion to let off a little steam. That's interesting. I could see that. I could see it being volatile and then they still have this sexual relationship. The volatility is almost the foreplay. Moving on to Contributor Corner. Contributor Todd sent in some thoughts this week. He says, one of the more memorable episodes in the series between the real fake controversy, the double dip controversy, Sal Bass versus Salman Rushdie, etc. While she's involved in the major plot point, Elaine doesn't do a lot in this episode outside of falling into Sidra and doing a lot of internal monologue in the sauna. But the screen time she does get, she makes the most of. Her plot is sort of an offshoot of Jerry's plot, but I don't know. I feel like they both have equal stakes in this plot. I like Elaine's contribution to this. I feel like her and Jerry are sort of in cahoots, accidental cahoots, I guess. But I don't know. I think that she does have quite a bit to do in this episode. And yes, I agree, Todd. Whatever she is featured in this episode, she does make the most out of and has a great performance. These are some of the quotes that Todd enjoys. Whoa, doctor. I touched them, needing them to break my fall. Todd also likes that Elaine asks Sidra if the guy who dumped her was into Superman and knowing his type. I agree. I think that was a really fun back and forth, especially because Elaine's like, oh, the ex-girlfriend is mentally ill, huh? Thank you, Todd, for sending in your thoughts. Next, we have Greg. He sent in some thoughts this week, and Greg says, I love how happy Elaine is in this episode to burst Jerry's bubble about Sidra's breasts. She mentions it almost immediately. Their back and forth in the first scene is really well executed, and while it becomes more of a debate in the apartment, they never get too serious or argumentative and almost always end up both laughing. Their dynamic as platonic friends with just mentions here and there of their past relationship is such a refreshing dynamic for a sitcom. They get a few scenes like this in The Implant, and I appreciate when the writers do that without having Kramer or George enter. While George's story with Betsy is separate and takes up a lot of time, I'm glad they didn't jam in something big for Kramer too. They just worked him into their own stories. I wouldn't have wanted fewer Elaine, Jerry, Sidra scenes as they are paced really well considering there is a lot more dialogue than actual action. We get 2 scenes with Elaine and Sidra in the sauna, which are somewhat short but loaded with Elaine greatness. Yes, and I think that's what I was trying to say a little bit earlier in response to Todd's comments. This plot is sort of shared with Jerry, but I think they do a good job of really isolating what it is Elaine is doing with this whole fake or real breast plot. And to me, the balance is perfect because I really do actually like George's plot as well. And so, Kramer gets a little bit on the side. I guess Michael Richards sort of gets the shaft here, but this episode is loaded with a lot of great plot points. And I'm just so glad that Julia Louis-Dreyfus stands on her own with these moments, and it's all great. Next, Greg says, one of JLD's biggest strengths is her face acting, specifically when there's an interior monologue. Her scene in the sauna where she's checking out Sidra is a perfect example for this. I love when she says, "Whoa, doctor." That seems to be a very common favorite because I love it too. Yeah, and I love the voiceover. Whenever they do that for any of the characters, it's very effective. And yes, JLD's facial acting when she's thinking certain things is wonderful. But did you notice the toes? Did you notice the toes, Greg? I'm just going to tell you. You got to watch it again and watch those toes. Greg goes on to say, my favorite line of the episode is when Elaine says to Jerry, "I've touched mine." And he cockily says, "So have I." And then she responds, "Oh, right, I forgot," just to get the better of him. Agreed. Agreed. Such a fantastic moment. Next, Greg says, as an aside, it was great to see a pre-fame Teri Hatcher and Megan Mullally in this episode. Funny how he dates a woman who played Lois Lane. Both actresses do really well in their parts here. I also recognized the ticket agent at the end as Lisa Turtle's mom from Saved by the Bell, and there's something about that actress that I've always liked. I think it's her voice, which is really soothing on the ear. Oh my God, she's totally Lisa Turtle's mother. Thank you, Greg. I was trying to place it. And I even looked at her IMDb. Maybe I didn't look far back enough. But great observation. And yeah, there is something just really likable about her. I will definitely agree with that. And yeah, it is really cool that both Megan Mullally, sorry, I never know how to say it, and Teri Hatcher, both, I mean, like superstars after this, and they're both in this episode. That's pretty amazing. Next, Greg says, lastly, I must side with Timmy. You do not double dip in a communal bowl. There are episodes where I find George annoying but funny, and others where he is just detestable. This falls in the latter category. I totally fall on Timmy's side too, but to me, I feel like George is reacting more to how aggressive Timmy is and not so much what his issue is with the double dip, because I think logically George would agree, like, yeah, that is gross to do that. And yeah, if you come at George that way, it's never going to work out. It doesn't matter how wrong he is, or even if he knows how wrong he is, it's not going to work out. Just like the moops, like if you're an asshole about it, too bad. George is going to be an asshole right back. Oh, and Greg says, one more thing. Why is this called the implant and not the implants? Did she just get one done? They should have called it the gym because they go there more goddamn times in this episode than in every other episode combined. Totally. Or they call it the health club. I always think that's funny. It's like, it's not the gym, it's the health club. Well, I guess I already did mention this, but they had to because that sauna and the gym set kind of took up the entire soundstage, and everything else was, kind of in the back, either behind it or not usable. So that's why they really had to utilize the health club sets. And there you have it. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you so much, Todd, for sending in thoughts this week. If you would like to contribute to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. And I will send you an email when I need notes for a certain episode. You'll get a due date. It'll be super easy. Contribute when you can, and when you can't, don't worry about it. My favorite Elaine moments. Well, I usually try and pick something that's not like the real popular moment. I like to, and it's genuine, believe me. A lot of times, like, yeah, of course I like the really popular moments and the iconic moments, but oftentimes it's very subtle things that really draw my attention. But here, I mean, I have to admit, the stumble off the sauna bench is so great when she falls into Sidra. JLD and her physical comedy gets me every time. And I guess a close second would be how she says, "I touched them," while shaping her hands like two boobs. Again, it's the physical comedy that always does it for me. And even with that little moment of her putting her hands like two little boobies, it's just entertaining. And my final notes. This is easily one of the best episodes of the series, and Elaine gets such a juicy part of it. JLD is so wonderful in every scene, and that repartee with Jerry is just, I'm going to say it again. It's so well written. And that kind of stuff is so fun to perform. How much fun they must have had on this episode. It must have been off the charts. Peter Melman really created a masterpiece with this episode. And I loved every plot. I really did. All the George stuff is funny as well. The double dipping and the scamming for the bereavement fare, I found very funny and entertaining. Everyone is really like at their core being in this episode. Like Jerry's being super shallow. Elaine's sort of got this suspicious thing going on when she thinks she knows something, you know. George is scamming, which is what George does. And Kramer is convincing himself of something that's implausible, like an implausible situation like Salman Rushdie working out at their club. He's definitely like a conspiracy theorist. So when everyone is at that core being, their core selves, that's when the show is at its best. Even though everything's kind of all over the place, it totally works. And when there's great writing, like in this episode, it's going to work. And I think that's all I can say about the implant, not the implants. Sorry, Greg. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.